All right. So our topic is running up the score in sports, and the question we're asking is whether running up the score is morally acceptable and/or ethical. Okay.
These are just examples of running up the score, being up 10 or more runs in baseball, leading by 3 possessions in football, and for sports in general, being up by more than points than opponents can be able to make up.
All right. So the importance, running up the score is important in all levels. So for professionals, it might be the idea of having the score run up on them, whether they were inferior or deserving to be up there. It could even impact youth sports, impact how kids perceive the game, whether they want to stick with it or not. It also influences the parents and coaches and how we're going to teach our kids. So along with that, it also will affect how rules are made, for instance, a mercy rule, and whether that'll fix the game.
We are for running up the score. Here's why. Public embarrassment is inevitable because seeing scores is like seeing high scores and people getting blown out is not a good game to watch. Blowouts can inflict embarrassment and pain on losing teams because you lose. I say it's embarrassment because you feel like you're playing hard, but the other team is just way better, and you feel embarrassed, and then it stays in your head. Like you're not gonna forget it because I know if I lose by 30 in a game, any game I play, I'm gonna feel embarrassed and I'm gonna remember that. So I'm just gonna work just as hard to be better. And blowouts, the opponents is disrespectful. Everybody feel like getting blown out is disrespectful.
So all of those were reasons why blowouts should not be allowed. However, we are arguing for running up the score.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the main reasons is that we look at running up the score as not being disrespectful. In fact, it's just playing the game. The intent of scoring in many sports is not to embarrass the other team or put them down. It's in fact to just pursue the goals of the game. Even in close games, loss can be painful. We have video later on to show that. But the idea that such a harsh loss would cause pain would almost be irrelevant in certain cases where, for instance, a championship game where it comes down to the wire, both teams are playing for everything in the end, and one team ends up losing by a point. That can be just as heartbreaking, if not much more. And then finally, the act of outperforming the other team is not, in fact, an act of disrespect. It's just testing your skills, and without the intent to harm the other team, there would be no moral wrongdoing. You're just playing the game the way it's intended to be played, and you just happen to be outperforming the other team on that given day. So,
Actions and rules. Run up the score is not wrong in itself, therefore the intent needs to be looked at. It will be up to the individuals to decide what is wrong. In time-based sports, it can become impossible for an opponent to come back. You can display good character by not following rules or goals.
Along with that, there's the idea of sometimes that lying ends up being almost morally acceptable, and there's an idea that in the instance of like having your mom and she really loves a shirt and she loves it, and lying might be the right answer in this case because it'll make her feel better. However,
same for girlfriends too.
For our arguments for running up the score, however, is that simply the act of scoring, again, it's not unethical, it's just following how the game's supposed to be played. And even if it were to be unethical, then there'd be a question of who should decide when the score is too much. It would not be a good way of just determining when to cut something off, because comebacks do happen and there can be a very rough line as to when that should be. Again, comebacks do happen in sports. The action, for instance, of letting off the gas or stopping playing, it can even cause a momentum shift in the game. So when you let off the gas, the other team might start rallying, the momentum will shift, and instead of having won the game, the other team can come all the way back, and it can even go the other way. So that is a possibility that could happen. And then finally, easing off, like how the other slide was about feelings. Easing off could be actually seen as an embarrassment, because if you are no longer playing the game and you end up winning while not even trying in the end, that could be seen as losing to someone who wasn't even there. So that could also be very embarrassing. So now we have 2 games.
You go ahead. I'll control it. Go ahead.
All right. Yep. So in this game, this is Super Bowl 50. This is this video was picked simply for the comebacks. The New England Patriots were down by 4 possessions with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. So there were 18 minutes left to play in the game. What makes this game so improbable is that during that season, the average time of possession for a team was about 2.7 minutes. So to make up 4 possessions, they would have to score 4 consecutive times, not let the Atlanta Falcons score 3 times, all with only 18 minutes left. And with the 2.7 minutes average possession time, so the 4 they need to score, the 3 they need to shut down the Falcons, that would work out to be around 18 or 19 minutes. So the idea that New England was able to come back was almost impossible, very improbable, but they pulled it off. So in a sport like this, it would be very difficult on when to decide something could happen, because there could be an injury, there could be a coach that figures out a way to finally break through the defense. Things happen, things change, and if there had been a rule such as that, the game would not have been able to progress the way it had.
Like he was explaining, that was for the comeback, and this is for even being in a close game. And you guys are still equal, and this is a championship game. You guys are still equal. It's shown that Villanova is up by 3, and Marcus Page is going to hit a big 3 to tie it with 4 seconds left. And it still shows that even in a close game, see, even in a close game, losing by 3, it's still devastating. It hurts. It still feel like you're losing by 30. So either way, both ways, it's still painful. Shout out to Villanova. That was a great shot, great team. Happy they won. Never give up. Remember that.
Okay, we're back. So, one of the solutions that we could have, and it would apply to almost every sport, could be a mercy rule. And some of the advantages for a mercy rule would be that they could be tailored to fit specific sports and or leagues. So, I play baseball, I'm going to use that as an example. And the major leagues, for instance, when the competition is much higher and it's much more difficult and unlikely for a comeback to happen, for instance, 10 runs. So maybe 10 runs could be that mercy rule. It's hard to get to, so it won't happen very often. And typically, when 10 runs gets to, the game is pretty much over. However, for Little League baseball, where you might have one star pitcher and then the rest of the team, not so much. The level of play varies more. Things could happen and change more often. That could maybe be tailored to be 15 runs, and that could be changed to be a certain number of innings as well. Our reasoning behind the mercy rules is the idea that we can keep playing the sport even when the score might be shifted one way or the other. The idea being that by continuing to play, you're not putting down the opponent, you're trying to reach a certain score to win the game. So that could almost be like an added objective, reaching that score over the other team, and that would be like an outcome. And/or so that just adds on to winning by the end of regulation or the end of innings. That could just be another way to win. And in doing that, this would bypass the respect aspect of the situation, because the intent of going up by that many points, it would not be about embarrassing the opponent. Instead, it would just be pursuing winning the game.
And there's some drawbacks to it, such as someone would still need to decide when there's limits to shit to be done, so we can stop the game so people won't feel embarrassed or feel some type of way after the loss. Potentially take away the chance of comebacks. And how would a mercy rule change depending on the time? Basically, depending on the time, say there's 2 minutes left and we're playing basketball and my team is up 30 and I'm playing against Tom's team, I'm up 30. There's no way they can come back in 2 minutes, so I believe they should just call the game and we could just end the game and shake hands there.
Yep. However, this is a little bit of a tougher decision to make, since it is a time sport instead of an inning. So comebacks might be more likely or less likely. Things are just a lot different in terms of mercy rules under time compared to normal.
Yeah.
So a sport like baseball, when comebacks are more likely to happen, the mercy rule will definitely reflect
Be
that.
more in effect. Yeah.
So another reason behind our mercy rules has to do with intrinsic factors to the game. So the intrinsic factors just being ideas and values present in the game, not exported from outside. There were, one of our sources, there was a study showing Little Leaguers and coaches and how someone's ego would pertain to their performance in their sport, and not just their performance meaning how they would act with others. It was shown that people with a lower, maybe not the star player, but the average player, how, oh boy. How by them playing the game, their ideas and beliefs behind the game going into it was not winning, not going on to play college sports. Their idea behind it was just enjoying the game. So with this in mind, with that idea being the main reasoning and beliefs for the game, having this idea of just playing the game to play the game, it helps one practice honing their skills near the end. It helps them build their own self-esteem. It helps them work on themselves, work on their skills, and it allows them to show higher levels of pro-social behavior, which is like teamwork and cooperation and working through things. So these intrinsic factors, by having mercy rules, it allows players to have more experience, allows them to play longer, and it allows them to work as a team for much longer. And it goes for both the winning team and the losing team, regardless of player. And it really helps to build character and helps to reinforce some of these ideas in the game.
Yeah, and to piggyback to say one more thing that Tom said, even if you just playing just to play, sometimes you play it and then you fall in love with the sport and then you just want the best for everybody around you, plus yourself. So it doesn't matter if you're playing just to play or just running around. You should be a good sportsman and try to help your team out. Also, considering the ability to maintain a high level of play while being able to eliminate the mindset of running up the score as being poor sportsmanship, and poor sportsmanship, the advantages overweights the disadvantages.
So just going back 1 second. So our beliefs ultimately stand on the idea that we're reinforcing the game, we're actually making the game a much better game in terms of the goals and the outcomes, and reinforcing the beliefs and values that we hope to get from the sport itself. And some of the drawbacks really aren't as significant. There's still the question on what should be done for like certain times or certain runs. Ultimately, that will come from just experience of the game and the tendencies of it, but that is again very tailorable to certain sports. And here were our sources.
This is sources, our works cited page.
And thank you.
Thank you.